Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I am Kristen Welker in Philadelphia. Right now, American leaders, both political and cultural, are navigating a complicated and fraught moment following Charlie Kirk's assassination, as President Trump blames his rivals for the tragedy and his administration tests how far it can go to crack down on dissent. It's forcing Republicans to grapple with how far they're willing to go to support free speech, and Democrats to grapple with how far they're willing to go to respond. It comes as the backlash grows following ABC's suspension of late-night host Jimmy Kimmel over comments accusing Republicans of playing politics with Charlie Kirk's assassination. Kimmel's supporters saying ABC's parent company caved to political pressure from the FCC chief Brendan Carr, who had threatened to revoke affiliates' licenses over Kimmel's remarks. President Trump then threatened further action, suggesting he'd punish TV networks that air unfavorable coverage of him. Listen.
Well, you know, when a late-night host is on network television, there is a licensing. I'll give you an example. I read someplace that the networks were 97% against me. I get 97% negative, and yet I won easily. I won all 7 swing states, popular, won everything. And if they're 97% against, they give me only bad publicity or press. I mean, they're getting a license. I would think maybe their license should be taken away. It would be up to Brendan Carr.
Now, earlier today, I spoke exclusively with Pennsylvania's Democratic Governor Josh Shapiro, who was himself a victim of political violence earlier this year when an arsonist firebombed his residence with his family inside. Here is a first look at part of our conversation. Free speech and speech has been in the spotlight this week after the news that ABC pulled Jimmy Kimmel, comedian, off the air after comments that he made on his late-night show. What was your reaction to learning that he'd been pulled off the air?
Fear, just worry for our country. Our foundational principle in this country, which has roots in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, when William Penn settled here in the 1680s, is about freedom of expression, freedom of speech. And to see that being undermined by the long arm of the federal government is extremely dangerous. Again, whether you agree with Jimmy Kimmel or not, whether you found him funny or not, to fire someone because he told a joke about the president repeatedly and the president didn't like it, to fire him because he was inartful in his words in the wake of the killing of Charlie Kirk, when you have others in the media, and I mean this is no disrespect, who are inartful every day, right? That is dangerous when we are selectively firing people because of their viewpoints.
I want to be very clear about what you are saying. Do you believe that President Trump and the Trump administration is trying to stifle dissent and people who would disagree?
Question. Pardon me. Without question. Yeah. They're trying to stifle dissent. The president, in his own words, I think it was aboard Air Force One a couple nights ago, made clear he wants to look at the licenses and the certifications for particular media outlets if all they're doing is attacking Trump. I mean, listen, the bedrock of our free society is the freedom of speech. The freedom for someone like you to ask me questions and opine about my work, whether I agree with you or not, whether I like what you report or not. You've got the freedom and the right to be able to do that. And that is something that protects all of us, all of us. And it is dangerous what this president is engaged in.
Now, you can watch much more of that conversation this Sunday only on Meet the Press. Now, we should note Democrats have also had their own intra-party disagreements about the limits of free speech and censorship, especially when it comes to speech on college campuses. But the White House's actions and threats are what is driving the current debate. And Democrats on Capitol Hill have been near universal in their condemnation. Republicans have been more divided. Texas Senator Ted Cruz, the chairman of the Senate committee in charge of the FCC, had pretty strong words of warning on his podcast today.
I think it is unbelievably dangerous for government to put itself in the position of saying, we're going to decide what speech we like and what we don't, and we're going to threaten to take you off air if we don't like what you're saying. And it might feel good right now to threaten Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah.
But when it is used to silence every conservative in America, we will regret it. And so, again, I like Brendan Carr, but we should not be in this business. We should denounce it. It's fine to say what Jimmy Kimmel said was deplorable, it was disgraceful, and he should be off air, but we shouldn't be threatening government power to force him off air. That's a real mistake.
Now, Republican Senator Cynthia Loomis striking a different tone, telling Semaphore this, quote, under normal times, in normal circumstances, I tend to think that the First Amendment should always be sort of the ultimate right and that there should be almost no checks and balances on it. I don't feel that way anymore. And with that, I am joined now by NBC News White House correspondent Yamiche Alcindor, NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Melanie Zanona, and Ty Cobb, who served as a White House attorney during the first Trump administration. He's also a former assistant U.S. attorney. Thanks to all of you for starting us off. Ty, thanks to you for being here. I am going to get to you in just a moment, Ty. I do want to start with Yamiche, though, who is at the White House. Yamiche, take us inside the conversations that you are having with sources there. Is there any concern about the pushback that you are seeing from the likes of Senator Ted Cruz, from other conservatives who are now expressing concerns about free speech?
As of now, in my conversations with White House officials, I have not sensed that they feel as though they're going to have a wave of pushback to these actions by President Trump. They really feel like they have the wind at their backs, and that this sad, sad tragedy involving Charlie Kirk has really, in some ways, emboldened them to make the case that there are people in this country that don't deserve to be on television and should, in some cases, have their license taken away when it comes to different networks. The president himself was very clear. He said on Air Force One there, I know you played part of it, he says, I essentially won the popular vote, have the support of the American people, the majority of the American people. And as a result, he believes that when he sees things on networks that are negative about him, that are majority negative about him, that is somehow not the will of the people and not in the public interest. And as a result, he feels like he can go after networks. How far this goes is a big question here. You also, of course, mentioned that Ted Cruz, there's also Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina, Ted Cruz, of course, being from Texas. They have been pushing back, saying that this is not what they want to see the Trump administration doing. But I just don't know how much weight those senators have in a White House where the president feels like he has the popularity of his party.
Well, you know, Yamiche, President Trump has said that he plans to speak at Charlie Kirk's funeral on Sunday. What are you hearing about what we might hear from him, what his remarks might be focused on Sunday, obviously paying tribute to Charlie Kirk?
We certainly expect him to pay tribute to Charlie Kirk. The White House hasn't put out a certain preview of his statements, but we can gather just by what the president has said in this tragedy and the way that his administration has been so personally connected to Charlie Kirk throughout the years, that he is going to be talking about Charlie Kirk as someone who they saw as a hero of the conservative movement. He has said multiple times that Charlie Kirk is someone that he credits for helping him win his way back to the White House, that he was incredibly talented in his mind, in the president's mind, with convincing young conservatives to really get excited about elections. And of course, we expect a sort of personal touch because the president's son, Donald Trump Jr., has said that for at least the last 10 years, he spoke to Charlie Kirk almost every single day. So you can imagine that the president has said that he sees Charlie Kirk as a sort of son to him. So you can imagine that there's also going to be not just the politics, but the personal here, Kristen.
And Yamiche, we should note as we're having this conversation, we anticipate President Trump might be making some remarks, signing some executive actions in the Oval Office. So we will take folks to that event once it does begin. But Melanie, let me get to you before we get to Ty. Talk a little bit about the divide that we're seeing, the reaction on Capitol Hill amongst Republicans.
Yeah, well, there are some cracks in the GOP over this issue, and I do think it poses an identity test for Republicans who have long prided themselves on being the champions of free speech. Now, most Republicans, of course, are lining up to defend the Trump administration. Most of the Republicans that I talked to over the past few days, including the leadership, have really chalked this up as to just a private business making a business decision based on their own standards, despite the fact, of course, that the FCC did pressure and threaten the company to make this move. Or in some cases, Republicans have tried to point the finger at Democrats and call them hypocritical for pushing to deplatform President Trump, for example, back after the January 6th insurrection. But there have been some notable Republicans who have been speaking out and expressing real concern about the government intervention here. Ted Cruz, for example, he's one of Trump's strongest allies on Capitol Hill. So it was kind of surprising almost to hear him on his podcast this morning saying that while he completely disagrees with what Kimmel said, he also believes that it's dangerous territory to allow the government to start dictating what should be on the airwaves. And he warned that Republicans aren't going to like it very much when the tables are eventually turned. And I do think, Kristen, privately, that is a fear shared by many other Republicans beyond Ted Cruz. Just few of them are willing to say that out loud right now.
Mel, stand by for us. I want to talk to you about the possibility that the government could shut down. I want to turn to Ty Cobb, though, on this topic. Ty, I want to start off by just, as someone who is a student of the law, as someone who is steeped in the law, get your reaction to hearing that ABC had indefinitely suspended Jimmy Kimmel.
Well, I think, Kristen, that it's evocative of what we've seen throughout history. I mean, in 1939, Dr. Goebbels, at Hitler's instruction, removed 5 comedians, or wittices, as they were called at the time, from the airways in Germany, and for criticizing or making fun of the government in a satire way. Putin, when he took over in the early 2000s, one of the first things he did was systematically silence critical media outlets, and independent TV channels were bought out or shut down. Trump is waging war on people who offend him. He's all about vengeance. And sadly, his subordinates, like one of the Project 2025 authors, Brandon Carr of the FCC, are following in line. And, perhaps the Presidential Crimes Commission that Representative Swalwell called for recently can consider this at the end of this administration. But these people are, abandoning our constitutional rights and our constitutional freedoms. Even Senator Loomis today, by saying, she doesn't feel like enforcing the First Amendment at this point, despite having, liked it when it suited her. That's a violation of her oath of office, where she takes an oath to preserve and protect the Constitution. So I think this is really tragic. And I think, as Carr said yesterday, there will be more shoes to drop. I think we can count on that. This will be 3.5 more years of vengeance.
Well, that's a pretty dire picture you're painting, Ty. And I guess my question for you is, do you see any guardrails? Is there anything at this point that could prevent the FCC from cracking down on other media outlets, as you heard President Trump warn could happen? How do you see this?
So I think let's take the president's statement about revoking the licenses to the networks. There are no licenses to the networks. That's how little he knows about the way the government works. But I think you'll see the FCC cracking down. I think you'll see more threats of the type that they've used successfully. I mean, pretty soon the only comedian left standing is going to be Caroline Levitt. I think it's really difficult in a country where the founders created 3 branches of government, all of whom have an obligation to try to prevent the others, from getting out of bounds. We've got a situation now where Congress has neutered itself through its cowardice, and the only bar to Trump's authoritarian instincts is the courts, and the courts are always going to be a little bit behind because that's the way they're structured, and it may not be enough.
Ty, I had that opportunity to speak with Governor Shapiro earlier today, and one of the points that he made was in previous comments, whether it be the vice president or President Trump in his second inaugural address, talked about the need to protect the First Amendment, talked about the need to stomp out so-called cancel culture. And this really flies in the face of that. You have worked with President Trump based on your interactions with him. How do you think he views, at the time that you worked with him, these protections? Is there a shift going on, or has this always been his perspective?
No, I think consistency is not something that President Trump is known for, and he always favors whatever enriches him or flatters him. And in this circumstance, he's greatly enriched if he can silence his critics, because he has free reign at that stage of the game. So I don't believe that this is in any way philosophical. This is all about his interest in power and domination.
Do you think, Ty, that the company is actually headed toward a constitutional crisis?
I think we're there. I think we've been
You think
there.
the country is headed toward a constitutional crisis? Sorry.
Yes, I think we're already there.
And what are you going to be watching for? Do you have any optimism that the country will find its way through this moment in a way that allows it to be stronger than before, as quite frankly, history has told us it has done so many times in the past?
I hope that's the case. I think it will take at least a generation for the country to regain the freedoms that we enjoyed 9 months ago.
A generation, Ty.
Yes.
That's pretty stark.
You have a lot of MAGA people in Congress. You have a lot of MAGA judges. You have a lot of appointees. Trump is populating what he calls the deep state with loyalists as opposed to qualified people. It's going to take some time to root that out and get back to a situation where we had aspirational, virtuous, intelligent people in those jobs.
How do you see the constitutional crisis playing out, Ty? And you say we're already there. What makes you feel confident that the country's already in a constitutional crisis?
Well, I think that the abdication of Congress of any role or responsibility in what's going on in America, other than to rubber stamp the president's authoritarian efforts, I think that is devastating to the country and clearly raises constitutional concerns that the founders hadn't contemplated. I think the founders assumed that people who took an oath of office to preserve and protect the Constitution would actually do so, as opposed to flounder like they are now.
You know, Ty, you and I talked a lot during the first Trump administration when you served the president then, and you always made it very clear you were serving the office of the presidency. Do you have any regrets about your time there?
No. I don't have any regrets about my time there. As you know, I'm the oldest of 8 kids from a small town in Kansas, and my dad was a naval fighter pilot. And I always believed if the president asked you to serve, you served. I think bad presidents deserve more help, frankly, than good presidents, because it's difficult to populate those offices, as we're now seeing. But it was difficult. But I was proud to serve and proud to serve my country.
Ty Cobb, as always, your perspective is so meaningful, and we really appreciate your joining us today to give us your insights.
Thank you, Kristen. Great to be with you.
Always great to have you, Ty. Please come back soon. Mel, let me go back to you on Capitol Hill, because you are watching a crisis of a very different kind. The Senate just voted to basically block proposals from both parties that would keep the government open. As I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, the key sticking points are opposition to cuts to Medicare, and of course they want subsidies to be included for Obamacare. What is going to happen now? Is the government going to shut down, and did I miss anything?
That's a great question, Kristen. I'm not sure that the leadership actually even knows the answer to that question. They are barreling towards a shutdown with no off-ramp in sight at the moment. And that's really for two reasons. One, logistics. Both chambers are going to be out of session next week for the Jewish holiday. And the House even just decided that they're not going to come back until after the government funding deadline. So in some ways, just conceding that there's going to be a shutdown of some length. And number two, politics. Democrats feel completely comfortable voting against these Republican proposals to keep the government open. They want to stand up to Trump, while Republicans feel confident that Democrats are ultimately going to get the blame for a shutdown. So that's where we're at. Of course, things can change pretty quickly here on Capitol Hill, but something is going to have to change over the next week or so in order to actually avoid a shutdown, Kristen.
All right, Mel Zanona covering a lot of ground for us on this Friday afternoon. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.